Can you hear me? How about now? How about now? Oh, you can hear me. Are you muted?
Is it on? I can't hear a thing.
I can't hear you now. Okay, maybe we should dial in again.
No, I can't hear it. Hello? It is it? Oh, right.
Voice Acting Unplugged.
Hello, and welcome to Voice Acting Unplugged. I'm Anthony, and we're going to take a deep dive over the coming weeks into the world of voice acting to see where we're going and what we can do to make sure we stay relevant in the marketplace. And I'm joined by my able co-host, Margaret Ashley.
Hi, and we have got an amazing guest today. She's a Jill of just about all trades. She's a British female voiceover, a narrator, a TV continuity announcer, and a voice of God announcer for live events. She's been working in voiceover for, 30 years, and she's been the stadium announcer for 11 Olympic and IOC International Game ceremonies, the live announcer for many corporate events and award shows, and she was the live stadium announcer for the closing ceremony of the Olympic Games and the opening and closing ceremonies of the Paralympic Games in London 2012. She's also one of the longest-serving female TV continuity announcers in the UK, and she's just been announcing on all kinds of channels everywhere. Let me introduce you to Trish Bertram, and she can tell you more about herself.
Hi, thank you for asking me. Gosh, that doesn't sound like me at all. I've overcome. Or it proves I've been around very, very long time.
Well, haven't we all?
So yes, let's start by getting a little bit about yourself. Where did you first start voicing?
Okay. How far back do you want to go? I was that precocious kid at school with the deep voice and the big voice. You know, I've got a default too loud button somewhere that was asked to read an assembly, announce on the microphone for sports day, this, that, and the other. And I grew up wanting to be an actress, and I did the rounds of the drama schools, and they all said, go away. And now I'd been in a convent boarding school, you see, which wasn't really a good introduction to life. And all the drama schools said, go away, live a bit, then come back and see us. And I took this as a sign of hope. My parents went, oh, well, you can't be any good then. And by that time, I thought, I really, really, really want to work in theatre. If I can't do that, I'll train as a stage manager. And that's what I did. And so your short answer is my first professional voicing. We're doing tannoy calls in front of house announcements and backstage announcements in various theatres. So that's how it started for me. That was my first microphone experience.
Okay, so where did it go from there? How did it become your main living?
Okay, so throughout the 80s, I was working in theatre. I worked in some great theatres like the National, Royal Court, Young Vic. Two things happened. One was various actors would come up to me and say, because they'd hear me on the tannoy and whatever, and they'd say, you've got a really unusual voice. Have you ever thought about doing anything with it? Now, when enough people say that to you, and I'm not saying they weren't saying you've got a great voice, or they were saying it's really unusual. And I thought, And then something else happened. One of my fellow stage management students, flatmates, who I'd trained at Central School with, wrote me a letter. And she said, I've fallen into this job in television. I'm going to be a continuity announcer for Westwood. You were the one that they all said had the wacky voice. Why don't you have a go? And she was Fern Britton. So Fern writes me a letter, because she was my flatmate and fellow student. So she writes me a letter. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's something in this. So I put together a little cassette tape on a little portable cassette. I wrote some continuity announcements from the TV Times and started sending that all around the ITV network and to BBC. Channel 4 hadn't launched at that point. They're about to launch, and various companies I could think of. And it just takes one to give you a chance. And that was London Weekend Television. How lucky was I?
Yeah.
And the reason they gave me a chance was because I lived 5 minutes down the road. So you never, ever knock what gets you in, is my philosophy.
Absolutely.
All their announcers, from Peter Lewis and Sue Peacock, as she was, Pam Rhodes, of the era, all lived out of town. And if anyone was held up in traffic or whatever, there'd be this massive panic. And they thought, we can find one that's on our doorstep that we can train up. She can be our emergency person. And that's how I got in. And so they trained me up, this person off the street. In fact, at the time, I was working next door as an ASM at the National Theatre. So I'd run from the National Theatre into London Weekend. I get this panic call going, Peter Nurse, yeah, it's going to be an hour late. Can you run? Can you come in? And I'd run in my blacks, my stage management blacks, from one building to another. Welcome to the weekend. You're watching London Weekend Television. And then Peter would arrive and I'd disappear. Because back then,
fabulous.
everything was live. Everything was live. Yeah. Announcing was live. There's none of this on-tape stuff, you know? So that's how I got in. The short answer is I lived down the road from the station.
Do you know, that's really strange, because when I was at school and that careers advisor came and said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be an actress. And if I can't be an actress, I want to be a continuity announcer. And they looked at me and went,
yeah, exactly.
What's a continuity announcer? We've got this great job. You could be an assistant manager at Bookless's, the greengrocers. No, never mind. But the weird thing was as well that I recently a couple of years ago, I did a play, and I had to play Fern Britton as the TV announcer.
Wow, it's a small world.
Small world.
Small world. But she had a great career. I mean, the thing about Fern was she was a natural on camera, which is something I'm not. You know, so I always stayed as a voice. I was always very happy being a voice. So, yeah. So does that explain it, really? I blagged my way in. I would say I'm a blagger.
Oh, yeah.
I blagged my way in. Once I was in, I absolutely loved it, you know. I got, from the announcing became the TV promos started up. Two things happened there. In that Channel 4 launched in 1982, and they put female voices on their trailers. Now, until that point, until Channel 4, no women ever voiced a television trailer on any channel. Can you believe it? Can you believe it now?
Oh.
You know, it took years for them to have female announcers, you know. And my boss at London Weekend went, get me a woman! Get me some women on the trailers! Who we got? And my mate Steve, who was a promo producer, he went, where's Trish? She might be all right. And so I got thrown into doing trailers, but I thought I'd better learn how to do this. So I would come in on my days off and watch Mike Carson and Greg Bance, who were the two big voices of London Weekend at that point, anyway, voicing all the trailers. And back then, when you voiced promos, you literally did it live in 30 seconds. You know, they had a gallery. It was run VT, caption on, music up, cue announcer, and you hopped in and out in between the sync and everything, and you learn how to voice a 30-second trailer live. When I say as live, because they were recording them to play out on air. None of this sitting in a sound dub where they slide you around a bit to hit the sync, you know. So that's how I started. Thanks to Channel 4 putting women on trailers, I then became a promo voice and trotted around various places voicing promos. The 90s were good because all the little channels started up and there weren't enough of us girls doing it. So I was just hopping around various satellite stations and whatever. So I've been lucky. I think I've been really lucky. You know, right place, right time is a lot of my career, really.
And very gifted, of course.
No.
I see. Now, has continuity changed
since my day?
Since you first started?
Right.
How so?
I don't really do it anymore live. My last live job was Channel 5, and that finished in about 2009, I think. So I haven't done it for quite a while, but I have still continued pre-recording for various little channels here and there.
Yeah.
It's changed, I think, personally for the better. I'm sure other announcers have said this, in that regional accents have been embraced. And I think that's a good thing. I want to hear the information coming out of my television. I don't care what flavor it comes in, providing I can understand what's being said and the information is clear. So I'm happy to hear. When in my day, we all had to have RP accents. In fact, London Weekend took me on as the down market voice.
No. That's horrific.
To RP.
Oh, of course, if you look back to Richard Baker, yes, and in their dinner suits.
You're going to be our down market voice, because everybody else was terribly posh on the television. still.
Yeah, it has
even
all
on
changed
ITV,
now, hasn't it?
Even
Ali
us.
Bowman on BBC, with a slight Manchester twang to her voice, sounds great. She's an old friend of mine.
Oh, well, I love that. I love hearing all the different flavours of voices. I think it's
Yeah.
made it far more accessible and interesting. And, but yeah, in my day, you had to sound remotely, you had to be a bit RP, which was, that's the change, really.
And then from that, you went on to do
Yeah, I
corporates
think
or
I was lucky.
radio ads?
Again, I just consider everything has been luck. In that, because I was on air in London, and with LWT just about every weekend, my voice kind of got known, and so I found myself an agent. And the agent introduced me into corporate world, and then I started picking. It was the days of trotting around Soho. Do you remember those lovely days?
Yeah.
Yeah, where you went from studio to studio and you'd arrive at 11 and they say, 2-hour session, Trish, would you like to see the lunch menu? Oh, yes, please.
Fabulous.
All of that. You staying for lunch? It's lovely, thank you. And, so that's that. When you're heard somewhere, as we all know, work proliferates. Work finds work. It's being out there in the first place. Harder today. So many outlets, so many channels, so many radio, internet. It's huge. But back then, there were only 5 channels, and then the cable channels all started up in the 90s. So it started to change. But, yeah.
And there are so many more voice actors now as well.
Well,
all
yeah.
competing. So how did you get into doing the voice of God?
That's another weird... I very much believe you make your own luck. I don't believe the universe will just go, hello, you shall be a voice of God. I think you have to make your own luck. If there's something you want to do in whatever industry you're in, you have to go and get it. And it started with 2006. There was an advert. Oh, no, my agent at the time got in touch and she said, there's something here you might be interested in. They're looking for RP, English, deeper voice. It's live announcing experience for an event in the Middle East.
Wow.
And I said, and she said, do you think you'd be? I said, yeah, I'd love that. Where is it? She said, Qatar. I said, great, a bit of travel. So she put me up for it, and that was the Asian Games. So out there, you've got all these games going on, not just the Olympics, but Asian Games, European Games, Islamic Games. The only difference being is the Olympics is the whole world, whereas the others are just slightly less, according to where they are geographically. So this was the Asian Games. And I said, yes, please. So she put me up for it, and we kept hearing that I was down to the last 12, and then I was down to the last 6, and then I was down to the last 2. And then we were told it was no go. And I was heartbroken. I really, really want this job. I'm an Olympics junkie, and that I'd watched ceremonies all my life. Being an old stage manager, show me an Olympic ceremony on the telly, and I'm there watching because I love that big, huge event. So I really wanted to do this one. I also said to my agent, who's producing this? And she said, you won't have heard of them. She said, they're called David Atkins Enterprises. And I went, I know who they are. They did Sydney 2000. Olympics fan, right? I went, they did Sydney 2000. Get me on that gig, She went, well, who are they? I said, they are Australia's premier event company. So I then said, if I haven't got this job... Oh, no. Anyway, the job didn't happen. And then a fellow voiceover, Graham Bannerman, rang me up a couple of weeks later, and he said, that job you really wanted to get? I've just seen it advertised again on a voiceover board somewhere. He'd seen it pop up online. And I went, send it to me. And literally they were advertising again. And I said, Jesus, this event's in about 3 weeks' time. They're cutting it a bit loose, a bit fine. So I rang my agent, and she went, oh, no, they're probably still looking. I said, I want to chase it. Something's happened. I want to chase this. And she went, and she reluctantly gave me the casting director's name. And so I emailed him. This is what I'm saying. You've got to chase the things you want.
Yeah.
I emailed him and I said, hello, I understand I was down to the last 2 for this job. I understand you've advertised again. I'm not quite sure what it was that you didn't like about me, but is there anything I can fix? can I make this better? You've obviously only got 3 weeks to go. So you know what I mean? It was obviously getting stressful.
Yeah.
And he emailed back and he went, he said, you were our number one choice. Whoa. But the Arabs, our clients, our Qataris, said your voice was too sexy.
No.
And can you lighten it up a bit? Can you lighten it? And I went, yeah, I think so. So I ran into the telly, borrowed a sound engineer chum, went into a sound up, and we mocked up a string of ceremonies announcements. And I did them terribly sort of light and girly. I kind of tried to speak terribly sort of much more, He put on some effects, crowd noises, fanfares. He did that for me. I sent it off to Qatar, where they were all based. And then I got a phone call, and it was from the casting director, a gorgeous Australian guy. And he called up and he went, Trish, if at first you don't succeed, try again. You got a gig. And I went, yay! So that one, right. That's a long story, but I go out and I work on this thing. It was huge. It's one of the most expensive, you'll never see it, but it's one of the most expensive ceremony events ever. If London 2012 had this budget, this amazing budget, that it was huge. And it was so exciting. Now, the exec producer was a fantastic woman called Catherine Ugwu, Dame Catherine Ugwu now. She would hang around. The announcer's box is always by the director's boxes on these events. So you're always up there with the big wigs. And I was constantly making her cups of tea because she was constantly looking stressed. And now it turned out that she then became the executive producer of London 2012, 6 years later. And the only announcer she knew was me. And she remembered I made her cups of tea. So that's how Doha led to London 2012 for me. So
was that slightly terrifying doing the Olympics in particular with such a huge audience?
I had sleepless nights. I mean, you know what it's like. We all get nervous, don't we?
Yeah.
We all get nervous. I had sleepless nights because I thought if I fluff anything, this goes out to the world live.
There's no re-record button, is there?
Yeah. And I developed a little sort of trick to get myself past that. And it was, I would walk, during the rehearsal period, I would walk to the stadium and I would say I'd remind myself, this isn't about you. You're just the voice. You're there to give information. It's about the athletes. It's about the country, our country. It's about the crowds have come to see it. It's about all these people who have been working for years to get this together while you just rock up at the last minute and go, ladies and gentlemen. So get a grip, Trish. It's not about you. And that was how I kind of kept myself sane. By just taking my ego right out of the equation and not even thinking about me, just trusting that my voice would work and I'd get the words out. And the other thing I did was I'd look through our box was right next to the Queen. So we had the most fantastic view. I mean, she wasn't sitting alongside me, We had the most fantastic view. But I'd trick my brain into pretending I was watching a TV screen. And I was doing continuity in my head, that it wasn't real through that window. All this stuff going on. I tricked myself that it was telly so that I felt comfortable in my environment. So those are the two tricks I employed to keep myself together, really. I'm sure, Peter Dixon's done these huge things as well. I'm sure he's far more confident about them. But anyway, I'm talking too much.
But the thing, presumably, doing things like that is you will have all these long, complicated names to pronounce. How much time do you get to prepare to learn those or to read over them?
Not a lot during the rehearsal period. We had rehearsals I didn't do the opening. I'll tell you why I didn't do the opening. I was up for the opening. Mr. Boyle, a certain Mr. Boyle, a certain Mr. Daniel Boyle.
Yeah.
Who I'd once worked with as a stage manager. This is what really pissed me off. He and I were once stage management together at the Royal Court Theatre.
Yeah.
Decided I sounded too middle-aged and too middle class for him, so he wanted a young voice. That's fair enough, that's his prerogative.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, some more important people than him wanted me, so I got to do the closing and then the paras. I've lost my track now. You asked me, what did you ask me?
So it's the long, complicated names. How?
The opening ceremony got 6 weeks rehearsals, so they had time to rehearse. We didn't for the closing. They had 6 weeks of rehearsals. We didn't. So what I did was I made a note of I went through all the countries and rang various embassies. I said to my fellow announcer when I turned up, "Hello, have you checked all these names?" He went, "Oh, no." And I went, I thought, I'm going to. I don't do anything without prep. So I would rang round embassies, checking how to say their names correctly. And we had a short rehearsal. We had about a week's rehearsal for the closing. When I say a week in the Olympic Stadium, where we were finally allowed to know. We had a few weeks out in a car park in Dagenham. But I know, which was hell. But it was also fun and hell at the same time, because it rained all the time. Everyone wore Wellingtons. We found out names and things at the last minute. The only one that was an unknown quantity was who was going to win the marathon. And the marathon runners run into the stadium. The finishing point during the closing was the end of the marathon. And so I just went down every possible name of everybody that was running in that marathon that looked like they were a hot contender. So maybe a dozen names, a lot of African names. And just so that at the last minute when we knew who'd won, I'd already rehearsed it. And you know what it's like, guys? It's about prep. Yeah. If you're over-prepped, nothing should throw you. And I'm an obsessive prepper of names and things like that. So, yeah.
Does anything ever change in that kind of environment? Do you suddenly get thrown a curveball? Like, oh, so-and-so's not here. We've got this guy instead, or...
Oh. I'm trying to think if it ever did. We did have, going back to the first one I ever worked on, the Doha one, in Qatar, an unexpected storm blew up the night of the opening ceremony, and all these stadiums are open. You know, they're open to the elements, all these ceremonies. And this was completely unexpected. And it meant that lots of sequences of flying and acrobatics and amazing things had to be changed and amended on the fly. And our director was on the headsets to hundreds, you can imagine how many hundreds of people are on the end of the headsets on a show that big. Just literally saying, "Follow me, everybody, follow me." And he was cutting. So we then also, as announcers, okay, that section's gone right. Everybody was literally doing it on the fly. When they put the official DVD together afterwards, they actually took the dress rehearsal and made that the official because the actual opening was a bit of a fly-by-night, all over the shop thing. And I thought, having got through that, nothing is ever going to... the Olympics went kind of okay. Well, my ones went okay. Closing ceremony went okay, apart from the Spice Girls, who were late getting on the taxi. There was all this screaming going, "Where are the Spice Girls?" Screaming going on around all the headsets. So anyway, yeah.
But it must have been a fantastic memory for you to have anyway.
Best time of my life. I kind of think after that, what now? Your Paralympics too, can I just say, I bloody love the Paralympics. It was the first time the Paralympics have been taken seriously by any country. Yeah. They actually, and there was an atmosphere of, this is as important as the Olympics. This is all under the banner of London 2012. We do not differentiate. Some amazing people were involved in the Paralympics. And it was the first time, because normally they were considered like, I don't know, a bit of an afterthought. But London took them seriously, put them on the map. And I think following countries have had to treat them with equal importance and quite right too. So they were great. I mean, the whole event was such. I've got a million stories, but I'll be here all night. So, but I mean, just ridiculous things like hang. During rehearsals, people like Ian McKellen would come and hang around our announcer studio because he wanted to hide, and you go, "Would I have a hobnob?" "Yes, Sir Ian, would you like that?" Can't believe I'm sitting here offering Sir Ian McKellen biscuits, making him a cup of tea and stuff. People would hide in our box when they wanted to not be found, which was great. So our door was always open during rehearsals. It was great.
So apart from the Olympics, is there any other type of voice of God that you do, like going to...
I've done a lot of...
opening ceremonies?
Yeah, I've done a lot of those. after the Olympics, I went to see John Briggs, who ran Excellent Talent, and fellow announcer, continuity announcer as well, and a voice of God himself, a great voice, and said, would he be interested? An Excellent Talent were at that point, I think, the first agency to start up a Voice of God category. And he took me on, and then he thanks to him and Pete Gold, they got me into the Voice of God circuit. It's still predominantly male, but occasionally people would take a punt on a female voice. And also, this isn't exactly a girly voice, is it? It's a bit, it's
an authoritative voice.
So thanks to John and Pete, I started doing Grosvenor House things. And actually, the corporate Voice of God events are probably harder than the Olympic events because you're doing an awful lot more talking. You really are. I mean, have you done?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
no.
They are actually action-packed because you are literally non-stop talking all the way through the event, and the nominations are, and you go down them all, and then they announce the winner, the host announces the winner, and then you're doing some spiel about the winner, and they're going up, and then they're off stage, and you're on to the next one. They're a lot harder than the huge epic events. They really are. So yeah, that's the only thing. You take a lot of throat lozenges, take a lot of water, and prep again. So my advice with those is always ask for the script at least a day ahead. Yeah. Don't just turn up and think, oh, I'll just read this, because there will be company names and people names and that you need to look up. And because no one ever has time to tell you at the venue. No one ever has time. You have to be self-reliant, is what I've found 90% of the time. You really
don't want to get it wrong, do you? Because it just sounds poor.
Are you always behind the scenes, or do you stand on stage announcing?
No, all the Grosvenor House ones and the other big event ones, you usually have somebody famous is hosting, and you are literally the voice of God that no one ever sees, which I like. I prefer that.
So who have you hosted with? Who are your favourite co-hosts you've worked with down the years?
Okay, one of the nicest ones was Sandy Toksvig, because she stood up in the Grosvenor House. I can't remember who it was for now. It was probably, I don't know, the pensions industry or somebody. And she said, ladies and gentlemen, something quite rare has happened tonight. She said, not only is your host female, but also your voice of God is female. And in my entire career, this has never happened. And she introduced me. She said, I want you all to say hello to Trish. She's up there, this and that. And I loved it for that. But she was right. It was quite rare. It's quite rare to have a female voice of God. It was certainly rare to have two of us hosting this, big corporate event. So hats off to that industry for saying, yeah, we'll do that. So largely the ones I've done with have been, they're mainly comedians who get booked, and that's interesting to watch, who their ways of working. Somebody I developed fantastic respect for was Bill Bailey, who turned up incredibly early with all his instruments, rehearsed everything, got to know everybody's names, was incredibly lovely to everyone. And I thought, gosh, I've known some, I'm not going to mention names, who would literally fly in the door at the last minute because they are famous person, capital F, capital P. Read the auto cue, and then when everyone has dinner, because with the Grosvenor House ones, you do a load of stuff beforehand, and then there's a pause where they all get pissed and have dinner, and then you do the rest of them after. And this famous person went right, and he said, okay, everybody, I'll be back in a couple of hours. And he ran off to his next gig and then ran back in, mucked up the auto cue, got the ending wrong, and now forgot to announce the lifetime achievement person. But because this person was very famous, he was probably being paid a fortune. Yeah. So it's a lesson to see who is. I'm not going to name that person.
I shall ask you after we've switched off. I've got to know.
Yeah,
brilliant.
It was. I was shocked.
Now, there's also pre-recorded voice of gods. How do you find those?
I think that's just.
Or have you done any?
You just have to remember the environment you're in. Sorry, I'm vaping here. Still a nicotine addict after all these years. You just have to remember the environment you're in. So when you're in your box, in your booth, mine's upstairs, you've just got to hype it up, give it the welly, give it a bit of welly. And so if anything, it's easier, isn't it? Just trot it out, and if you don't like the sound of it, you can do it again. So what you don't
sure.
get is the adrenaline of working live. I mean, you guys have worked live. I mean, do you, Anthony, I know you have a radio background. There's nothing to beat working live, as scary as it is.
No,
Right.
it's fantastic. It's surprisingly exhausting.
Yeah.
But brilliant.
Yeah. I read you did the fly. You were a flying eye. I was so impressed.
I was for a while, yeah. I did that for up in the northwest of England for Rock FM, and also I did Jack recently.
Yeah.
Well, I say recently, when it launched in Oxford. I did Jack for a few months. I used to train people to do traffic and travel, and ran an office in Manchester, which covered all the big stations up in the northwest.
Yeah.
It's an incredible environment to be in, a live radio environment. It's the news is the same. Things are always changing, things are always moving, and no 2 days are the same.
I have real respect for radio people, because I don't think I could have ever done it. I was tried out a couple of times. I've stuck to radio imaging. That's my comfort zone for radio, but total respect for radio people. I think that's one of the hardest areas of working with your voice. I really do.
It's really good training as well for reading and talking to time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That I found that with doing TV continuity. We'd have to do great long screeds of stuff back in the day. Not so much now. And talking to split-second timing. Yeah. That's a skill. Once you've got it, it never leaves you.
Yeah.
I was going to say, is there anything that you would suggest to people who are interested in becoming a voice of God that they could do to improve their chances?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one, because I feel I blagged my way into it. As I always say, I got lucky. I chased after a job that led to another one, that led to another, that led to another. I think maybe making the best demo tape you can possibly make, and the way to do that is to go and snoop on the working voices of God out there. I mean, Darren Altman is he's a regular out there now, and Jonathan Clays, I know. Go and have a listen to what they're doing. Don't necessarily copy them, but be aware of what they're doing with their voices.
Johnny Clays is another traffic and travel man. He was also at the same company as me.
Oh, right. Oh, I do like Jonathan. He's a nice guy.
He's top, yeah.
Yeah. But going back to that, the thing also to do is to collate a list of all the event companies that are out there, because they're the ones hiring the voices of God. And maybe if you pitch yourself and say, you don't have to go to an agent. Here I am. Here's my demo tape. If you like what you hear, maybe you can knock off 50 quid off the fee or something. I don't know. Is that a bad thing to do? I don't know. I remember once I was sent out on a cheap deal on my very early corporate Voices of God. Give Trish a go and we'll knock off 100 quid, which is the agent, But you know what I mean? I don't know what you have to do these days. It's a hard one. It's a hard one. But I'm sorry if that's not a very good answer.
No, it's the reality.
No, it's just to tell people it is. Yeah, some people won't even know what a voice of God is. So listening to this, they'll learn.
I used to find some people didn't know what a continuity announcer was because
Well, hence my career advisor.
That's right. I always used to say, if it's done well, you don't notice it. If it's done well, if it's not sticking out like a sore thumb, if they aren't stumbling all over their words, if it's not an unappealing voice, if it's done well, you shouldn't notice the announcers. You really shouldn't. They're just feeding you stuff. It's a bit like radio imaging. I feel that as well,
Yeah.
Traffic and travel with Anthony Russ.
What next for you, Trish?
What next? Do you know, I'm very old now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
So
right.
I'm being very passive and just being very grateful that I'm asked to do anything. I did the odd Voice of God still comes through. I did one a couple of months ago, a big one. I did the World Procurement Awards. Have you ever heard? I didn't even know what procurement was, but it was an epic show out in the O2 area, not the O2, but in that area, wherever they all are, out in Greenwich way. I'm just passively grateful to anything that comes my way. So I still do the occasional Voice of God. I've still got some bits and pieces of radio imaging going on and a bit of TV station announcements. I was doing Cruise First today. I do the cruise channel.
Fabulous.
Thinking, oh, I'd like to go on a cruise now. Yeah, so I'm literally just grateful I'm still here, really.
Now, I think I read somewhere that you had written or were writing some audio drama.
Okay. My first love was theatre. And hence I worked on it for, say, 8 years or so. And I've now got to the age where I get the state pension, and I'm spending it going to the theatre because I've rediscovered my first love. And then I thought, actually, I always had an itch to scratch of wanting to be a writer and wanting to write. So I joined a script writing and playwriting group locally, a brilliant tutor. We have the most fantastic tutor. And started putting out bits of work out there. And you've done one of these. Theatrical Shenanigans did one of my plays.
I've
right,
done
well,
quite a few.
they chose one of mine, so I was delighted.
That's where I found. That's obviously where I saw it. I thought, oh, Trish is writing plays.
I stage, put on a stage reading of one of mine, Miranda Harrison, and just
I've done those as well.
The best thing ever was a short play I wrote very recently. It was a final four in a playwriting competition staged at the Orange Tree. And I thought, I'm not worthy now. I can die happy. So I went to the Orange Tree Theatre in Richmond and saw my play being done. And it's a short play. When I say short, 15, 20 minutes. But the plan is to keep writing longer and longer and longer. And who knows? Who knows what? But that's my big love.
Well, listen, we've actually come to the end
brilliant.
of our little time here. It's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you, Trish. A completely unique area of voiceover that I really wasn't aware. Well, I was aware of, obviously, but had never worked in. So it's all interesting to me.
Oh, bless you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for
taking
asking
the time to join us.
Thank you. Thank you for
very
asking.
welcome.
And you thought you had
No,
nothing to say.
I hope I didn't ramble on too much.
No, not at all.
Should have interrupted
Not
me.
at all. Very interesting.
Well, anyway, if I'm sure you will have done, enjoyed today's podcast, please do subscribe, hit that button, leave us a review, let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you've got any questions you want us to ask about the industry or guests you'd like us to invite, then just let us know.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.